Welcome everybody to the April RAC meeting. John, if you can do the honors and call the roll, please.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. Chair Leibowitz,
Here.
Vice Chair Stout,
Here.
Solomon Chen said that he was not going to be here. Kiana Cleveland, also not here tonight. Leonard Edwards, Lucas Habosky.
Here.
Brian Meyer, who will be joining us shortly. Dina Passman said she will not be here. Pat Sheehan.
Here.
Great.
Which one?
Ali Siddiqui.
Here.
And Brandon Wu.
Here.
All right, Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you, John, very much. Obviously, it's that time of year, I think, where everyone's catching up on work and has various obligations, like we all do. So certainly understandable for everybody if you have to miss something here and there. John, let's move down the agenda. Do anybody from the public that would like to speak to us tonight?
Anybody from the public? If you want to make comments, now's your chance. Go ahead and...
You can use the raise hand button if you would like. Going once, going twice. Okay, so nobody from the public wishes to speak, which is totally fine. Just want to give that opportunity to do so. So let's move on down to part 3 of our agenda tonight. And the reason why I'm moving quickly just through these parts is because we do have a packed agenda, and we want to make sure that we have ample time to discuss, talk to our presenters, kind of move forward with that. And then obviously we have Lucas's, opus that we definitely want to look at for the annual report committee section. So let's talk about wayfinding and customer service improvement update. So one area where recommendations can be useful is in conjunction with efforts to improve wayfinding. And personally, I've found the new signage to be really helpful, particularly at L'Enfant Plaza. And I know riders do seem to be responding positively. Riders that I've talked to in kind of my network and just kind of about town have also remarked that stations, just kind of a couple little things, don't really point to bathrooms. Although at Herndon, they definitely do. But that's like the only one I've ever seen that's really good at that. Some station announcements at various tourist-centric stations, some people say maybe they can be made in languages other than English and Spanish, particularly in the tourist-centric areas. And there might be a better way of directing riders to the right buses in more of a seamless manner at the train stations themselves in some way. That's kind of things that I've heard. But we're going to hear from Brian Anderson, the director of, make sure we get this right, Digital Customer Innovation, to see where things stand and what we can do to assist. That was my piece. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. That was a wonderful introduction, so I appreciate it, Michael. Yeah, thanks for having me, and also on behalf of Sarah Meyer, our Chief Experience Officer, us. Basically, I'm going to walk through our February board presentation on wayfinding and digital passenger information updates. I'm new to the process here. I'm totally open to a discussion. So, I'm happy to go through the presentation and then wait to take questions, comments, and discuss. Or if you feel that, you want to interrupt me, please. I'm here to use the deck as a guide and hear and converse and brainstorm with y'all. Sound good?
Sounds good, Brian. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you. Allow me to just let me know if you can see the presentation.
Yep, we got it.
Yes. Okay, great. So I just want to talk through everything we do here at Metro ladders up to our strategic transformation plan. And so the work that we're doing in wayfinding and digital passenger information aligns with service excellence and regional opportunity. So I know I've been here before to speak to the RAC, and just a fine reminder that, or if it's new to y'all, we have a discussion about our customer journey. These were 7 steps that define the blueprint for the projects that we at Customer Experience, as well as at Metro, are working on and thinking about. We want to focus on two of these items because they've been identified as the most pressing. It's Navigate, which is responding to our customers getting lost, and Waiting, which is reducing the anxiety by giving customers a more real-time and accessible information to know when a train or a bus is coming. So first, let's give you an update on our L'Enfant Plaza wayfinding pilot. So back in September, we launched the wayfinding pilot at L'Enfant Plaza, and we've made a ton of progress, replacing over 200 signs in the station, incorporating customer-tested preferences, including exit labeling, neighborhood maps, cardinal directions, and more station ahead lists. We kept costs low by using in-house teams and materials, and it's a big shout out to our WMATA colleagues who have all made and installed these signs, as you can see. Customer feedback and research was baked into all of the efforts from the very start. And while we're still iterating, we're finding things to optimize and fix. We use our website and social media and opportunities like this to discuss and hear and get additional feedback through that entire process. If you haven't already, this is a plug for wmata.com/wayfinding. It's sort of our blog post where we keep everyone updated on what we've done and a little more thorough explanation of some of the details that are in the pilot. So first, let's talk about the Metro Rail station entrances. Customers told us that they want our entrances to be more easily seen. They didn't understand what the stripes meant at the top of the pylon. If you can see my mouse here, I'm circling it. And they also wanted to know where the elevator was. So these new pylons on the right represent our attempt to address some of these issues. They have larger route markings, entrance and exit lettering, a concise station name, and then improved accessibility and elevator information. Also, we want to talk about from the inside, there's no longer need to wonder which exit to take. We're labeling each exit with very prominent lettering that can quickly identify them from hundreds of feet away, as you can see from some of these pictures at the 9th and D Street exit, as well as the 6th and D exit. Additional exit guidance on signs and maps throughout the station work in harmony with this new lettering system. And even better, these exit letters are not just on our signs. We've incorporated our L'Enfant Plaza lettering into the open transit feed known as GTFS. We believe this will build confidence in the navigation experience even before stepping foot on Metro. So when you plan a trip, you know from the start which exit to take instead of aimlessly wandering around the station. You can find this today in Transit app, which is a screenshot on your left, and Google Maps, which is a screenshot on your right. And if you notice these yellow highlighted areas, that's where it calls out the entrance and exit lettering. At the platforms, we worked really hard to think about the right mix of information on the two panel signs you see here. The upper level at L'Enfant doesn't have columns, so hanging signs are typically affixed to our vault walls. We incorporated improved elevator and transfer information, larger and more concise route information, and cardinal directions, all called out on the newer sample down below. We even added cardinal directions to the lower level signs and reduced the number of arrows and signs from 3 to 1. So you can see that we really focused. So at the top, what you're looking at from June 2023 is an original L'Enfant Plaza sign, very destination based, with multiple arrows of the train direction, how to find an elevator and an accessible entrance, and then an add-on sign that reaffirmed that it was the direction to Washington Dulles Airport. All of that got consolidated with one nice arrow focused on accessibility and exit information. We have cardinal directions, and of course, we incorporated the airport badge into the Silver Line. So as you saw from our wall signage, our station ahead maps have been significantly reworked for our pilot at L'Enfant. Getting these maps were very challenging, and we're always trying to find the balance between comprehensiveness, clarity, and conciseness. You can see a typical station ahead map from the Pentagon here on your left, and then the other two that you look at on the right are the L'Enfant Plaza pilot versions. We've given the text breathing room, proper alignment for visual clarity. We've increased the font for accessibility, and we've added things like jurisdictional boundaries, again, airport information, and regional transit connections. So let's talk about some maps. Our customers are constantly telling us that they want to see more maps in the stations, so we added additional maps at all 3 entrances at L'Enfant on both sides of the fare line. We're improving the design and the functionality of the maps themselves, and here on the right is an example of the new style of our station area map, which we're calling Neighborhood Connections. On the Neighborhood Connections map, there's clear designations for the 3 exits at L'Enfant Plaza using our new station lettering, plus a list of points of interest associated with the area. We've included regional transportation information again, like VRE and Capital Bike Share. And we're working with the Southwest Business Improvement District, or of course the Southwest BID, to ensure continuity of navigation on the street level. We've recently produced sidewalk decals for them. So when you come up to the street, whether it's the landing at L'Enfant Plaza or underneath one of the buildings at 7th and D and 6th and D, they're going to adhere additional wayfinding elements to the sidewalk to help further guide you to attractions like the museums, the mall, and the wharf. So you can see that from the website and our customer research and social media that our customers noticed. So here's just a snapshot of some of the comments that our Office of Customer Research pulled in December. Everything from the exit lettering to the new signs with the font and the readability, all coming through to our customers. What we also did is we also did a focus group with 3 distinct customer segments: English speaking, limited English, and low vision wheelchair customers, to see if they could achieve 2 tasks: boarding a train at Navy Yard, or boarding a train to Navy Yard, and taking the exit nearest to the Air and Space Museum. The majority of the participants overwhelmingly boarded the correct train, but we noticed that some participants had difficulty finding the correct exit. So how did we solve this? We improved some of our original signs from September by adding exit lettering and local attractions to signs facing customers while they're exiting the train. So check out the difference on the original photo here at the top and one of the newer signs today at the lower level of the station. We think this resolves the problem, but we're going to continue researching and working with our partners, including this committee, to make informed decisions as we build toward a broader rollout. So next, let's move on to digital signage and other passenger information. You can see from this slide, the headline is clear: more screens in more places. We know our screens help our customers with valuable real-time information, even as we continue to refine our messaging and design. Our main job is rolling new screens out to more stops and stations as fast as we can. So last year, we rolled out 140 new bus screens, 100 new rail screens, and that includes some of the highlights that we've noted here. We've added entrance displays at Metro Center, Columbia Heights, and soon to be Farragut North. We're cleaning up the unpaid areas in stations by removing old phone booths and other outdated infrastructure and adding screens at Union Station, L'Enfant Plaza, and Bethesda. And we've done that all with in-house teams. So now let's check out our passenger information design. So the first highlight across all of these pictures is a clean, consistent design on every screen. And everyone noticed this delay here on the far left? It's that dreaded sight when you're in a rush. We're working with our IT or digital modernization team to rethink how our algorithms predict trains to try to eliminate those dreaded 3 letters as much as possible. We made some small improvements today, but expect more updates to come throughout this year of 2024. Also at L'Enfant Plaza and Metro Center, we've debuted the upper level transfer information that you see here on the far right on our downstairs screens. So this helps the customers decide if they want to walk or pick up the pace to catch their connecting train. And finally, at 40% of Metrorail stations, we launched the new real-time station ahead design. This incorporates dynamically changing stop lists, next train arrival information, and wayfinding. So let's take a closer look. So from the bottom up, in the white square is the upper level transfers card with live information. Above it is the dynamically changing stop list showing a blue line train that's currently boarding at the platform. And when the train departs the station, we're ready to show the next 3 trains in real time with the upcoming stops of the orange line arriving in 2 minutes. So let's shift gears to Metrobus. We continue to focus on installing screens inside the bus and at stops, and we're starting at Minnesota Avenue. So we've installed 10 new real-time screens for waiting customers at the bus bays, as featured in the picture on the left. We plan to launch new bus stop information designs to make routes and arrivals stand out on the smaller screens, as well as clearer bus departure information inside the rail station. And for those not yet in the station, we have a web app called MetroPulse, and we've added Metrobus information for that to give you real-time arrival information and the performance of your favorite or most used bus line. So what's next? For static wayfinding, our goal is to wrap up the piloting signs in the 3rd quarter of this year, approximately a year from when we started. But before we completely wrap up, we'll continue to get customer feedback, have discussions like these at steady intervals of 3 and 6 months. We also intend to extend some of our popular design elements like revised maps, pylon faces, and station entrance and exit lettering to Metro Center and Gallery Place. We'll also complete another full station pilot at Roslyn, a key transfer point for our Virginia customers traveling between Alexandria and Arlington. When all is said and done, we'll incorporate our findings into our Metro signage guidelines and present a full-scale rollout plan later this year. We're also installing 270 new screens for dynamic real-time information. We'll continue to make data improvements that add consistency across our systems, bringing elements like the exit lettering to third-party travel planning apps and clean up our bus information database. Behind it all is a modern integrated technology system to begin to centralize control of our screens and other communication channels like email, text, and web from a single place. And before the year is out, we'll be excited to beta test a new customer app tying all these expansion efforts of real-time service information and performance information together with revised data, enhanced wayfinding, and modern alerts into the palm of our customers' hands. So thanks for your time. And I'm excited to have a discussion and hopefully answer and entertain any questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. So here's what we'll do is gonna just as anybody on the rack that wants to ask you questions or make comments, do the hand raising that Ali did.
Sure.
And I will direct you as we have a guest that has sent some questions to you in the chat as well. Not sure if you're able to access that. If I can read it to you, if you can, just to kind of make sure that our guest is the questions are, acknowledged. And then I'll have a couple questions for you, and then we can have a good discussion. So Ali.
And can I confirm everyone saw every slide of the presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my computer asked to update in the middle of it, so I didn't mean for that to happen.
That's usually how it works. Ali, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Brian, for a great presentation. It was very informative. I'm just curious about this, like the Font Plaza. So now we run the pilot. After the pilot period is over, do you anticipate this being applied to all the metro stations or only the major hubs like Metro Center and Gallery Place, Chinatown, where there's more than one line running through it?
So Ali, thank you. We do envision that this gets applied to more Metro Rail stations. The dream is always all of them, but we want to at least be focused on high volume, complex stations, and those stations may be served by one line. You have a station like DuPont Circle or McPherson Square close to the White House that can benefit from all of this additional information to help guide visitors through the station to, above ground attractions. So that's our goal. We're just starting with the transfer stations because they're the most used based on just passenger counts, but also our research has shown that they're the most complex. So So hopefully later this year we'll have a plan, but you'll start to see it not just at the transfers. We're going to try to extend some of these features to more stations, like the two I just mentioned, throughout the year. It's timing and resources, but that's our goal, is to get it to our more popular stations, if not all of them.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
All right, good question, Ali. Brandon, go ahead.
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much again for your presentation.
Thank
My
you.
question is about, I guess I don't know if this falls under the purview of this pilot, but it's specifically like showing bus transfers at stations that are also like, I'm thinking Friendship Heights, thinking of Tacoma, where, you know, there's buses right above the rail station, and like you can usually see the departures, like departure times of like when the next buses are coming. Is that something that's a part of this pilot / something that will also be integrated as, you know, the pilot expands?
Yeah, short answer is yes, Brandon. So right now, today, actually, and in a couple of our, in about 40% of those rail stations that have modern digital screens, there actually is bus information. It's just unfortunate that Friendship Heights is not one of those stations. But whether you look at Gallery Place, LaFont, and Metro Center, on the mezzanine levels, kind of tucked away on the sides where our old passenger information displays are, when we modernized, we put, we call them two-line PIDs because of ceiling height. But we actually put two signs next to each other, and one of them showed departing bus information, and another show the departing rail information. So that's kind of where we start and where we've been for a couple of years. You can also go out to a station like East Falls Church or West Hyattsville and see a huge cube that hangs from the ceiling. Even no, I'm sorry, not Potomac Yard. That is a different setup. But that's where we have rail information walking in, bus information coming out. But as we put more screens in more places and put them against the wall, like in some of those pictures, we want to be able to put real-time bus next to it, so we kind of get it out to more stations and we don't wait for massive infrastructure overhauls to do it. But your point's well taken. Our goal is always to get bus information in the station. And even as we think about static wayfinding, we're always thinking of ways to direct people to the bus better. So we're totally open to ideas. I'm just going to lay out what our biggest challenge is. Older style signs that point to buses always had the route numbers. What happens is that becomes a challenge when we start changing routes, because now we're changing not only bus stop signs, but rail station signs. So totally open to ideas, whether it's just the confirmation that bus is above, or, you know, like, what is it that you, this group, or on behalf of customers want to see that really drives home buses above, and go take it.
I have a question, Brandon. I have a follow-up because I had a similar question that Brandon. Are you good, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm good.
So I just take this time on this one. So it's kind of regarding like Metro Pulse and the new app. And so one of the things that, you know, I know personally is a little daunting, and I know visitors, you know, is that actually physically finding the bus stop when you get off a train, like which street corner is it? Like that can be, particularly in the urban areas. Like I know it's really easy, say at like Wheelie Reston or something like that.
Yeah.
In some of the suburban areas, it's good. But for example, say I go to Foggy Bottom, I take the Silver Line to Foggy Bottom, and I want to go to Glover Park. You know, obviously there's no metro up there. You know, it's kind of like Tenleytown's kind of the farthest north from there, so it's kind of weird. So I want to take a bus, you know, up Wisconsin Avenue or whatever. So if I use Metro Pulse, is that going to tell me like, okay, I get off the train, here's where you go. You make a right, you go up, you go on this street corner to find this bus. Is it going to guide someone? Like, you know, I'm kind of like an idiot. So like I could do the idiot test. Can you get like someone like me to from the train to the bus, you know, very seamlessly without like looking around, like all kind of like a weirdo? I don't know.
I don't think that you're an idiot doing this, just first of all. But Michael, I mean, that's our goal, right? So the initial launch of MetroPulse as the web app was to, you know, share the performance of our service. You know, it replicated Metro Hero as that duo who managed that for many years, you know, dare I say retired from monitoring Metro, right? So that was the first iteration. But to your question, the goal of turning Metro Pulse into the ultimate Metro app is to you know, make its roots in trip planning and then be able to A, pinpoint where you are and the service around it, but then B, start adding those little things that say, okay, like you just exited the station, walk right, cross street, boom, there you are. And not only did hopefully we get you to the right spot, you know that the bus is coming in 5 minutes. So it's on the roadmap. I'll confirm if that's part of the launch, but I know that trip planning and service nearby, and then where, you know, when is the service coming, are all the top you know, first launch features. And I can get back to you on where like walking directions and kind of pinpointing a more extended transfer, where that comes in the timeline.
Okay, thank you. And just
Yeah.
because I know it's one of those things like where apart from the rack, I've never seen any signs or anything for MetroPulse. I know other pilots and things like that going on. So I mean, so I think the first place that I go if I want to find something like my Glover Park
Yeah.
scenario is to go. I go to the WMATA website, Trip Planner, and then so I'm looking at it right now as kind of my example, and
Mhm.
it's pretty good where it says like walk, you know, 2 minutes, 0.1 miles to 23rd Street Northwest and First Street. But then in real life, it's like, okay, which street corner to go to, you know, like stuff like that. There's a lot of little nuances. I just wanted to call your attention more than anything else.
No, I appreciate it. Okay.
Okay. Um,
And we can
Lucas,
continue that discussion. Like I said, I'll follow up with you, or you know, when I'm back, or you know, always feel free to send these suggestions.
just because one of the, I think the scariest thing I think for some people or some riders when they, particularly coming from like the suburbs into the city, is like, okay, now I want to take a bus, and it's like, where's the bus? So just anyway, that's my
Mhm.
thought on that. Lucas,
Of
go ahead.
course.
Yeah, I had a question kind of around the plan for like digital bus stop signage or like real-time displays at bus stops.
Sure.
Is there like a plan to expand that to like all individual standalone bus stops? Or is that kind of limited to bus bays and like transfer stations specifically?
So today we have over 700 screens across the region, and those are at individual bus stops as well as, you know, like transfer, like metro bus bays or transit centers, like
Mhm.
Tacoma Langley or Seven Corners. We have two flavors of technologies out there. First is we have an LED sign. You'll notice it because it's bright orange font in
Mhm.
two lines, and that is attached to bus shelters across the region that's an individual stop. So whether it serves one route or five, we have that flavor of sign already throughout our network. The second is where there may not be a shelter, a newer technology that we started debuting around, I believe, 2018. If you need the exact date, I'll be happy to get back to you. But somewhere before the pandemic, we started debuting e-paper. E-paper is similar to the Kindle, driven by solar, and it's pole mounted. So again, individual stops. So whether that bus, you know, one of our newest signs is outside of the Courthouse Metro, which is not a Metro bus bay. It's just, you know, Wilson Boulevard,
Mhm.
served by one line, one Metro bus line, one ART, and it's there showing next buses. So we have it now, and that's our plan to continue to put it both in facilities as well as at individual stops.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think just like a lot in my area of DC, it's kind of inconsistent when it comes to digital signage at the bus stops, and I know a lot of people tend to, that's something that they really ask for when you talk to them about
Sure.
Metro. So
Yeah, no, we know that real-time information is the most desired piece of information. May I ask what part of DC you're in?
yeah, I'm in Northeast, kind of up in Ward 5, Rhode Island Ave,
Okay.
Brookland area, Eckington. So
Of course. All right. I'm a former resident of Noma, so know that
Amazing.
area well. And also, just so you know, I'm sorry I didn't add this to my answer. We do look at ridership data, which
Mhm.
often drives where we put the signs.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Lucas, for good questions from everybody. So, Brian, I know they're in the chat, like I mentioned, there's an individual named Greg, has numerous questions in there,
Yeah.
very good ones. So, I'll leave it to you. I think definitely the questions are worth getting answered. If you want to just go kind of scroll through and just answer
I-
some, and then, but maybe if you can, if there's a way for him to contact you so he can kind of answer them more in depth or something like that. However, whatever's you're comfortable with, I think.
Yeah, I think, well, here, if I may, I don't know how I'm doing on time, but if I may take a quick scan through and try to
Sure.
give some high level answers. I don't know if I have an answer to everything in here, but I did take a scan, so I'm going to give it the best shot I can. And then if they, I mean, I don't know the record of this chat, but John, if we can connect and I can get these in an email, we can do them more in depth. How does that sound?
Sounds
Sounds good.
perfect. Perfect to me
Okay.
too. It's interest of time, but also acknowledging and his
Yeah,
questions and taking them.
absolutely.
Right.
So appreciate the comment on the, and I'm sorry, is it Bob or is it Greg?
Oh, so what did I say? I might have messed that up.
Oh, I thought I heard Greg, but is it Bob? Bob.
It is Bob.
All
I got
right.
that wrong. My bad.
No, it's all good. All right, here we go. We're gonna try some rapid fire. So, um, how are the map designers? So appreciate you commenting about the new maps. We did have a team of contractors come in who had some mapping experience to help get us off the ground. Our intention is to build a stronger practice of map making. But right now, we have these base templates of neighborhood connections, and we're just trying to iterate off of those in this pilot phase and get feedback. We do our customer research. We have a customer research department. We have a director named Ray Yao. Very thoughtful, has a very thoughtful team who does a lot of great work. And the insights that I provided in the deck were done by a 30 to 40 person focus group when you go across all three of the segments, who walked through the station and their experiences were filmed by putting an iPhone in their shirt pocket, and then the team reviewed the video and then drew some insights. We also had a wayfinding firm help get those signs created, and they did some in-station walkthroughs with some customers as well. I'm sorry I can't necessarily speak to the methods and the instruments, but we will be sure to get a more in-depth answer for you there. When we talk about the new displays and the designers, what we got there because we have our first ever digital design guidelines that were created, and any designer within the organization just starts there and uses them. And even if it's one of the technology vendors who are managing the content and the screens themselves, they use some of their in-house forces, but they use our guidelines, and that's how we are starting to maintain consistency. We use to determine the effectiveness, we're just trying to do the same methodologies that we talked through, right? Whether it's our Office of Customer Research, social media, just general customer feedback. If a train is in fact delayed, why not transparently share that useful information with riders? I think I could use a little more detail there. I think, but if it refers to my presentation, so the DLY showed up for a varying amount of factors, right? Sometimes it just takes a couple of extra seconds or minutes to load a train, or a police officer stepped on board, checked a car, stepped off. DLY originally appeared when a train held in a station for 2 minutes. Traditionally, we start alerting at 5+ minutes in station over PA and PIDs. And then at the 10-minute mark, we issue a Metro alert, which is email and text. So the delay, but customer research told us years ago that if I'm waiting at all, it's a delay. So, but we're trying to do better at that algorithm, like I said. But we try as hard as we can to be transparent, but happy to, walk through a use case or a scenario if I didn't answer that right. Display designs considered through the design. How did measurement of their effectiveness? I'm sorry, I'm not 100% clear on that one. So I'll get back to you on that. And we continue to define success by all of the data that we get and the insights, whether they're qualitative or quantitative. If someone is, we kind of look at it as a product roadmap. So what you're experiencing is a pilot or a minimum viable product. If we constantly get feedback, I don't understand this, I don't like this, why don't you have this? We evaluate that, and then we work it into our design cycle. How does the app know my mobility constraints? So that's what we're figuring out as we try to roadmap out the app. We also work with our accessibility department, who right now is working on a separate effort that has an app that will they are mapping stations, and hopefully when it launches, they will receive an auditory instructions of how to move by clipping their phone to their belt in a special holder, and the gyroscope and all of the other sensors in the phone recognize the steps and the direction, and all that, and then that comes together. So right now it'll be two separate efforts, but part of the road mapping process is figuring out how to bring all of these disparate pieces into one good Metro app, as I said, and then work through testing and deployment of features. Okay, how did I do?
That was great. Thank you, Brian, for that. And I'll say to, he's, let's see what he says. Great.
Okay.
So
lots of thanks. So thank you, Bob. I just want to make sure I did well.
So thank you to all the members of the RAC and to Bob. And I want to say to our guests, whether it's Bob or anybody else who's on here that's a guest, if you have questions in the chat, John left a email that if you can send messages through John to get to Brian or to any recommendations or thoughts you have. And you can also, send out the RAC some things too as well, because we're always looking for recommendations from riders and things like that. So we do, Alex, I know.
Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead.
waiting for Alex to drop
Yeah.
the question. So
we definitely want to hear from Alex. So Alex, you can go ahead, and then we will move on.
Thank you. I really appreciate the presentation. Very informative. I wanted to kind of go back to the topic we touched on earlier about navigating out of rail stations and onto buses.
Mm-hmm.
Like specifically, maybe I don't know if it's at platform level or closer to the mezzanines with those like neighborhood area displays. Would there be a way to maybe make a map of buses which also includes like where the specific stops are for each route? And that could maybe even correspond with like exits too. So like maybe think of Farragut North, where you want to go to L Street if you're looking for a northbound bus up Connecticut Avenue, but maybe you want to go to K Street if you're looking for like an east or westbound bus, or something like that.
Love that idea. Yeah, we absolutely can do it. Right now, if you look deeply at the neighborhood connections map, where I believe where there are markers is where some of the key bus stops are and where routes start and stop. But I hear what you're saying. You're looking for optimal pathways out of the station to connect to the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say like one of my experiences of sometimes walking out and I'll be a little bit confused of like, which exit should I take to get to which station or to which bus and that type of stuff. But yeah, thank you.
1,000%. Yeah. I'll add it to the list.
Okay, that Alex,
Alex,
as always, was a great question. Definitely kindred spirit on that thought. So perfect. So I think what the RAC we should consider any recommendations and pass them along. We should have discussion, whether it's at the meeting or internally via emails and communicating, so that we can, again, come up with some recommendations. Because I think that's, I think that'll help you out, Brian, if I'm not mistaken, kind of. So that's going to be our task going forward, and hopefully in the near future. But otherwise, I just want to thank you. Actually, let me look. I think make sure those hands up. Oh, Bryna, your hand is up.
Yeah, Mike, thanks. I just wanted to thanks for the presentation, but thanks to the RAC, because you guys are the eyes and ears of the riders, and so this is that collaborative work that we've been talking about. So formal recommendations, Mike, from the RAC, I think Brian would be helpful, but also Brian, I think like on the ground feedback is also helpful for you, right? Like you guys are out and about. Lucas, your comment, Cole's comment a couple of weeks ago, flagging something very specific about rider information in real time is just really helpful. So I just wanted to express my thanks to the RAC for being the eyes and ears on the ground. And Brian, if it's okay, for RAC members, what's the best way? Is it just to keep coming through John, through you?
Yeah,
I think is the best way.
absolutely. We
So
get
yes to
comments from
formal
John
recommendation. Yeah.
every day, so that's a perfectly fine route.
So it's an and, Mike. I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think, oh, Brian, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say a couple quick things, may I, before I wrap up. Thank you all, and I appreciate this thoughtful discussion and your comments and compliments. Second thing is always happy to come back, and take 20 minutes to whiteboard or discuss these ideas and findings, without a presentation or whatnot, but so if you ever want to allot time there, just, John knows where to find me, and I'm happy to take time out of my evening to do that. And then also anyone who has time in the next month, if you can all agree on a good date, even if it's a weekend or a night, I'm happy to walk you through L'Enfant so you can actually see all of this in action. And then we have some neighboring stops so we can go through these signs and information and brainstorm together in person that way.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian, so much for your presentation. And to the members of the RAC, what I suggest we do is for both formal and informal recommendations, maybe throughout the month as you think about things that you might want to recommend or issue spotting and things like that, send it internally to members of the RAC. Then we can send a consolidated email to John, who can then send it on, wherever. And we can also use that same thing in case we want to make formal recommendations as well. So but thank you, Brian, so much. We're going to move on.
Thank you again, everyone.
It's a great presentation.
Have a great evening.
Okay, so that was good, as always. So we're now speaking of things that are good, and we're going to do the Better Bus Outreach Plan. The RAC has been fortunate to have been kept in the loop during the Better Bus process ever since I've gotten to the RAC a couple of years ago. And we appreciate certainly all the efforts to solicit the RAC's recommendations as well as the riding public. Melissa Kim is the program manager for Metro's Office of Planning, and she is going to tell us where things stand. And we look forward to hearing that. And again, as always, thank you and welcome back. And you're on mute.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. All right, everyone's able to see my screen. Okay, wonderful. So thank you for having us back. Brian got into a lot of details and exciting on the ground stuff. This is a little bit more high level. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about our plan for our next phase of outreach for the bus network redesign. So kind of shifting gears a little bit. As Michael mentioned, my name is Melissa Kim and I work in Metro's Office of Planning. I'm one of the deputy project managers for the Better Bus Network Redesign project. And today we're going to really quickly go through the project background and update. I know it's been a little bit since we last spoke. We'll give a little bit background on our phase 3 engagement approach. We'll talk through next steps and then happy to take any questions. I'll probably pause after each of the sections to take questions as we're moving along. All right, so just a refresher, the Better Bus Network Redesign is a project to really rethink and revitalize, redesign our bus service. And it's part of a larger Better Bus initiative that includes a lot of ongoing efforts. You can see here, Customer 2.0, Brian just spoke to a lot of the customer information we're working on. Zero emission vehicles, priority lanes and signals are all part of this Better Bus initiative. And the Bus Network Redesign specifically just wanted to flag that moving this all forward is contingent on adoption of our fiscal year 2025 budget. This is review for many of you probably, but bus network redesigns are not necessarily a new thing, but it's new for Metro. So a lot of transit agencies across the country have been undertaking these redesigns as a way to really take a more transformative look at how our bus service provides mobility to people that live in the region. So we've known for a long time that buses are a key part of our region's transportation network, and that was kind of really shown through during the pandemic when the core of our public transportation was really bus service. A few other reasons why we're doing this now: our region has grown, people's travel patterns have changed, and we really understand the need to prioritize the customer experience in our bus service. So last spring, we were out in the public sharing our visionary bus network. We had a number of sessions with the public. We had kind of a hands-on session with you, which is something that we can repeat this phase if there's interest in that. But really, that was the bus network that the region needs and deserves. And during our last phase of outreach, which was last spring, we received over 8,000 comments on those routes. And then we spent the last several months really updating the visionary network in collaboration with our jurisdictional partners based on what we heard from you and others during that round of outreach. We have also been working to develop our proposed 2025 Better Bus Network, which I'll get to in 1 second, but that's really going to be the main focus of our next phase of engagement this spring. Again, contingent on fiscal year 2025 budget adoption. We'll then take what we heard from you all, from the public, to finalize this 2025 Better Bus Network, take that network to the board for hopeful adoption, and then work towards implementation of the new network in the summer of 2025. So this is our updated schedule. It's shifted a little bit since we last spoke to you, but this is the latest and greatest. A couple of things that are different from the visionary network that we took out to the public last spring. So one key difference is the proposed 2025 Better Bus Network that we're taking out this spring is limited to the resources that we have available today. So while we still want to build towards the visionary network that the region deserves, this is what we can start operating as soon as 2025 within our existing resources. As I mentioned before, this network includes updated service design based on a lot of what we heard through our last phase of outreach and engagement. And then there are also a few additional elements beyond service changes that we're going to be talking about in this phase of outreach. So a small number of closely spaced bus stops have been proposed for elimination to try to increase transit travel times, will make them faster and increase reliability. We're proposing new route names that were developed based on customer research that we did last fall. And hopefully many of you took the survey that helped inform these names. And since we want to start implementing in the summer of 2025, this network is also clear about who would operate the service in the proposed 2025 Better Bus Network. And that's particularly relevant in Prince George's County, where we're also redesigning the bus network. The next time that we'll present to you will be in June, but at that presentation, we'll be able to get into a lot more details. But at a very high level, I wanted to just touch on what the proposed 2025 bus network was designed to do. So first, it will better connect the region by linking people with jobs and destinations and other transit modes. The network was designed to improve access to bus service, especially in evenings and on weekends, really building out that all day and all week frequent service network. It advances access to opportunities for residents in equity-focused communities. That was a big goal of this project. And it also makes bus service more convenient to use by making it more direct and easier to understand and increasing frequency. And again, I know this is probably hard to see, but we'll be getting into a lot more of the details about what those specific changes are and what the specific outcomes are in our next presentation with you. So we'll get a little bit more into the approach to building the network, ways that the network better connects people. We'll have examples of what that looks like. You can look at the new map, including the recommendations. We'll get into ways that it provides this better access to all day, all week service, how much time customers would save on this network, making the same trips that they do now, but with a network that is more direct and more frequent. And we'll get into that in the next meeting and really be able to kind of dive deeply into all of this with you. But really the focus of today's presentation is on the spring engagement. I'll pause right now, and if anyone has any questions on kind of the background before we move on. It looks like Brenna.
Does anybody have used a hand raiser if anybody has any questions?
Looks like the hand. Oh,
it's back up.
Yes. Okay.
That's a leftover hand. I'm trying to get it down.
Okay. Sounds good. And I'll also take questions at the end. So if they come up, wonderful.
We can keep moving. Sounds good though. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So these phase 3 engagement goals probably look very similar to what you saw last year, but again, we're trying to increase awareness and understanding of the proposed 2025 Better Bus Network. We're really focused on getting the input we need, particularly on this 2025 network, and focused on our riders and how they would be impacted. And we'd also like to generate support, build advocacy, and create champions. And how we designed kind of this phase of engagement was we really tried to incorporate some of the successes and lessons learned from the last phase of engagement. We're working to reach more communities by partnering with community-based organizations, with local jurisdictions, elected officials on events focused on sharing information with their constituents. So really trying to partner and piggyback on events that they have already ongoing. And since we're working towards board adoption and to enable 2025 implementation, we're also building a public hearing into our engagement for this phase. We are going to be using a lot of the same tactics that we had in the last phase. We're going to be having 3 Discovery Day events, and these are going to be held one in each jurisdiction that really are intended to help people learn about the proposed network and give them the opportunity to provide feedback. It will be very similar. I know many of you were able to attend our workshops in the last phase. It'll be similar to that. The main difference is there will also be a separate public hearing room where people are able to provide their feedback and testimony. But I will say that this phase of outreach is being designed to include a public hearing so that we're able to include all of what we hear through all of our digital engagement, online engagement, in-person engagement. Through all of that, we want that to be included in the public record as part of this next phase. We'll also be doing some targeted pop-ups. These will be located in high change areas that have high ridership, and will also be largely located in equity focused communities. These are going to be a way that we're out in the public hearing at stations and stops from folks about what they like or don't like about the proposed network. And then we'll be doing a lot of ride-alongs again. These were really successful ways to hear feedback on specific routes. So we'll again be doing a lot of ride-alongs as part of this engagement. Like last phase, we're also going to be seeking feedback in a number of additional ways. We're going to have a pretty large suite of digital engagement. We'll again have a way that people can leave comments on a route by route basis through an interactive map. We'll have a large map library that has route profiles and a large static map that people can look and interact with. We'll have a survey that people can take to provide their input. And we're also planning to continue robust stakeholder engagement as part of this effort. So we'll plan to come back to you. We'll plan to go to the AAC. We'll plan to go to our Community Connections Committee with a lot of the more detailed information, and also with the request to kind of amplify our reach in this next phase of engagement. We're going to have focus groups with youth. We're working with our union leadership to share all of the updates as part of this network. And then we also are hoping for heavy involvement with elected officials, community-based organizations, and other employees as part of this effort as well. So these are largely materials that we shared in the last phase, but just wanted to let people take a look at the types of things that we'll be sharing. So again, we'll have a really large static map, one for Maryland, one for DC, one for Virginia, that people can engage with and look at. And that unfortunately will not be screen readable. It's not possible to make that screen readable, but we will have route profiles for every single proposed route that depicts the network and also calls out key points of interest along the route. And our team is making sure that the ordering of all of the elements in these makes sense so that screen readers can be used on these. We'll also have, as I mentioned before, this interactive map that people can use to understand the changes that are being proposed and then directly drop in comments on the route that they're looking at. And that's a great way for us to get route-specific feedback that then we can incorporate into the next version of the network. And then again, we'll have a trip planner available to folks so that you can put in an origin and destination pair that you often use, and you can see what your trip, how far you can get, or what your trip would look like today versus with the proposed 2025 Better Bus Network. So those are the main materials that will be available and that we're excited to share with you in this next phase of engagement. And then in terms of next steps, I know we've asked this of you before, but if you haven't already, we do have an e-newsletter that will share all of the locations that we are planning to go as part of this next phase of outreach. Again, assuming board adoption of our fiscal year 2025 budget, we're planning to be out in this spring. So there'll be a lot more information coming out via our newsletter about where we'll be and other important information that we want you to have. When outreach does kick off, we would love if you could tell everyone you know about the new bus network and why they should provide their input. We will have materials and kind of a digital toolkit that will allow you to spread the word through social media if you're interested in doing so. If you work somewhere where you'd like to put up posters, we can bring you a kit with collateral. And then I know many of you attended an event. We had a great event with you all kind of in the L'Enfant room in person where you all looked at the maps and provided comments. So if that's something that you're interested in again, please do let John and myself know because we'd love to do that again. And then again, our next presentation will be coming back to you in June with a lot more detailed information and to really get into the weeds of the new network and also some of the results, some of the benefits that this new network would provide. And if there's anything that you'd be particularly interested in, we're still developing a lot of the materials that we're going to be using in this next phase of outreach. So if you have any ideas that you think would be useful for us to be thinking about as we're developing these materials, please do feel free to let us know. And then happy to open it up now to any discussion or any questions or we would love to also hear the best way to keep you engaged, especially as we have kind of more detailed information that we'd like to dive into in this next phase of outreach.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation. As always, it's always good to see where we're going and where we've been with this. So I think maybe we'll do the same deal as before. To everyone in the rack first, raise your hands. We'll go through the list. And then time permitting, we'll ask you to look at the chat because Bob has a few questions on there. And if Alex wants to has a question as well, and then we can have a discussion. So let's start off with Brian.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Melissa, for that very comprehensive explanation about public engagement and, what you've done so far and kind of next steps. Definitely looking forward to the rest of spring and summer for getting a lot of that stuff. And in terms of just engaging with us, definitely as complete and finished collateral as you have, definitely helps us with our engagement with stakeholders that we're in communication with. I do have a question. I think it was on slide 8 that there were some additional changes that would be included in the, the proposed Better Bus Network that were different from the draft visionary network. Are these changes based off of public input, staff recognition of ongoing issues, external events, kind of these 5 things? How did we get to noticing that these are new issues that we need to address? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of the changes that we made were in response to public comment. So I think I mentioned that we received over 8,000 comments in our last phase of engagement on the specific routes. Most of these were from the public and from stakeholders. We also got a lot of comments from our bus operators. So I don't remember if I've shared this with this group in the past, but we do have a very comprehensive phase 2 public engagement document that summarizes what we did, but then also, I think more interestingly for people, summarizes all the comments we got on all the specific routes. In this next phase, the team is actually working on providing responses to each of the comments we received. So it's not kind of like all 8,000 comments in a list, but they tried to group them by themes, and then they'll provide a response of how something was changed or how or why something was not changed. But I think looking through that, you'll see that a lot of the input that we received really did shape changes that we made to the network. The second piece was, I think we always knew that we want to build towards this visionary network, that we think it will be best for the region and better for customers. But we also know that in our environment right now, we need to start within the resources that we currently have. So that was another big change, was we used the updated visionary network as kind of the basis for forming this. We basically took elements of the visionary network and whittled it down to what we can realistically do with our existing resources. And that's where we had a lot of collaboration with our jurisdictional partners as part of this. And that was another big change. So the stop consolidation and the new route names, those are both new elements that I think often tend to come along with redesigns. This is really kind of a once in a generation opportunity to change some things that don't make, that are kind of relics of a long time ago and maybe aren't necessarily intuitive or easy to understand. But this is going to be the first time that anyone sees these proposed new bus names and the proposed stop consolidation. So we, as part of this, are welcoming any feedback on what you think about the names. It was informed by customer input. We had a survey effort, and that informed what we ended up recommending. But because these are both new things, we're really looking for input on these items, in addition to where the routes are going and the frequency with which they're operating in this proposed 2025 Better Bus Network.
That's all great to hear. And I think one of the things, especially, and I know that we're talking public engagement, I don't want to get too in the mud about content specific to changes, but I feel like that bus stop consolidation, that's a real game changer, because it sounds, for someone who may only casually be a bus rider, like a bad thing that you're getting rid of bus stops, but the efficiency that it will lead to is going to save so much time. And so I think just kind of getting ahead of it in terms of marketing that, and in terms of, at these outreach events, what are examples of like how it would save time? Because I know I ride the 38B frequently from Ballston to wherever I want to go, and you could cut out numerous bus stops and have near zero impact on people's accessibility and have great dividends in terms of saving time and creating a faster service. So I'm glad that you included that in there, and that it was both probably part of people's comments saying we want buses to come more frequently and faster, and for service not to be slow. And maybe it was our inferences that said, well, consolidating bus stops are a big part of that. So yeah, just echoing what Cole said. So I'm glad. I think it's just really being proactive in the marketing of what that would look like and how much time could be saved. So people don't have that knee-jerk reaction of you're eliminating bus stops, that must be a bad thing. It's a good thing, and here's how. So, but thank you so much, Melissa. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Those are great points. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you, Melissa. Brandon, go ahead.
Hello. I think I have maybe 2 questions, but they're both pretty brief. The first question is actually just to kind of follow off of what Brian just said. And I guess my question is really focused on how you balance the trade-off between like customer feedback and like the public engagement that you had, and like, I guess, pure quantitative data. I think what comes to mind is in kind of Glover Park, Georgetown, there are a few bus routes that have pretty low ridership, but obviously serve communities that I think under the previous draft network would have been cut. And I think there's like very clearly data that shows that like many of those buses may not have high ridership, and obviously resources are limited. But at the same time, I'm sure like people in the public wanted to give their feedback. And so I guess how do you kind of go through those trade-offs and make decisions based off of that?
Yes, I'll start by answering that one, and then you can get to your second question. It's a great question, and it's a very challenging thing to do. Absolutely. I think, so the way that the service design team really approached it was that every comment was read, and then we went back to the data that informed the decisions. And we also went back to the goals of the project, because there are some changes that could be made. For example, if there was a stop that people were really eager to continue to have that really didn't impact travel time or our ability to provide frequent service. And that's something that we could change without then without causing us to no longer meet our goals. So that was done pretty much at, thankfully, a lot of the comments had similar themes. So it wasn't necessarily that they needed to go through one by one and do this kind of exercise, but I will say that there was a lot of data that was looked at in addition to the feedback that we heard. And that's why in this next iteration, we'll kind of have that comment response that says either, yes, we made this change based on what we heard from you, or no, we didn't make this change because X, because we know that the trips are happening between here and here, or because we know that ridership on this route per our annual line service report is very low. So there will be kind of that data pulled in to justify why we didn't address every comment, because we kept the goals in mind of the project as each comment was being addressed, and either changes were made or not as part of that.
Sweet, that's super, super helpful. And then my other question, I guess, is about the upcoming timeline, because I know you mentioned already that there was like a delay for the network, like the year one network or whatever it's being branded as now, will be launched in summer of 25, pending FY25 funding. But is it like, I guess I'm curious what the circumstances were around why it was pushed back a year, and also if like there's a potential that further budget cuts or things like that could potentially shift it to 2026.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll first say that that the shift that happened, or the kind of delay in the project that happened, was largely because of our budget conversations. And there's a lot of talk, unfortunately, about our doomsday. There was more previously, and to a certain extent, those conversations are still ongoing, but there's a lot of conversation about the doomsday budget. And we didn't want to be talking about what we think bus can and should be, while also talking about cutting a lot of bus service, because we didn't think that we'd be able to get the engagement that we need to kind of build the best network possible. I will say, if for some reason our budget that ends up being proposed does include a lot of cuts to bus service, then we're going to need to do a lot of rethinking as part of this project, because we are proposing a network that would use the same amount of resources that we're currently using. And a lot of it really is designed to work well as a network. That's kind of the beauty of being able to design the entire network at once, as opposed to kind of the smaller or corridor specific changes. And so a lot of those benefits really do, it's important that we are able to implement the network in its entirety. So I think we're really hopeful that that won't be the case, but that is just a consideration that we're thinking about through all of these conversations, and unfortunately just a reality that we're faced with. I will say also that implementing a network redesign is a really heavy lift in terms of the training of operators that need to understand and be able to operate this entirely new network, all of the bus stop signs that need to be changed, and all of the maps that need to be changed, all of those types of things do require a lot of time. So I think the 6 to 9 months that we're hoping for in terms of being able to kind of turn around an adopted network, hopefully adopted network to implementation, is probably pretty typical for what agencies, or maybe honestly a little bit faster than some of our peers have undertaken. So we're in line, even though it seems so far away. We are in line with the timeline for implementation that others have done in the past for their redesigns.
Great, thanks so much.
Yep, thank you.
Lucas.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could maybe speak a little more to the strategy around engaging with like the equity-focused communities. I think like personally, thinking back to when the Visionary network came out, and you could go on the interactive map and see the different comments that people were putting up. It looked like a lot of the comments were kind of definitely more focused towards, you know, communities that were a little better off than ones that were maybe more equity focused. And I think that kind of got to a point where even like my council member wrote a letter to WMATA basically asking for some of the changes to be rolled back because they were, you know, taking away some important lines for folks that maybe didn't get a chance to comment as much. So I was just kind of interested to maybe hear some more about that kind of strategy when it comes to engaging with those communities.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So we target most of our in-person events in equity-focused communities, which for Metro are areas with a higher concentration of people of color with low incomes and individuals with disabilities. And we do that kind of for the reason that you just laid out, is they typically make up a higher percentage, especially of our bus ridership, but often we hear less from them. And so the idea is that if we go to locations that we know they're traveling, that we will at least be able to increase the amount of engagement we have with them through our in-person. Like we go through surveys with them in person, and we do have statistics somewhere, I believe in our phase 2 engagement report, about the difference in demographics of the people that we heard from through our in-person events versus we don't have demographics for the map because I didn't get it demographic information, but certainly to your point, a lot of the comments were concentrated in wealthier areas. So we are trying to be proactive, and where we are going in person, we want to target those resources towards areas that we know we hear from people less. And that's definitely a big part of the strategy. That being said, we know that we are not hearing from a lot of people. And so that's part of the ask to you, part of the ask to a lot of our community partners is like, how can you amplify to make sure we want everyone to know this is happening, and we want to hear from everyone. So a big push that we have in this phase that I mentioned briefly is we're really trying to partner with people in their existing events. And a big part of that is we have this standing group called the Community Connections Committee that is largely advocates and community-based organizations that we're working with to kind of supplement events and try to directly engage with the people that they work with. So in the last phase, we had an event with So Others Might Eat. We had an event with House of Ruth. So some organizations that are doing great work in the city and also represent a lot of the people that we hear from less. And so trying as much as we can to partner with them and extend the reach of our outreach is something that we're focused on in this phase as well. We're also open. Again, unfortunately, we have limited resources, so we can't go everywhere, but we're open to any suggestions. Now's a great time. If you have any ideas of ways that we can reach out and better engage, we'd love to hear that. And it sounds like John is facilitating a lot of ongoing conversations between the presenters and you all. So please feel free to follow up with him to connect with me on any ideas that you have to extend our reach and to hear from more people of color, low income, people that are riding more, but we also hear from less, because we definitely want to do as much as we can.
Oh, great, thank you. I think that's good. I think just like when you look at the interactive map like we did way back, it was kind of like a little just disconcerting to see just kind of the imbalance, but no, thank you for that.
Thank you, Lucas. I have one question for you, Melissa, regarding the consolidated bus stops. Do you have, I mean, besides, talking to riders, things like that, because there's kind of like a mini consensus in our little chat here that, Cole mentioned on the 70, there are multiple stops that are like less than 200 feet from each other. And obviously as the RAC, I think we kind of defer to AAC, for things like, for, disabilities and things like that, because 200 feet obviously can be a lot for some people. So I guess my question more is, do you have actual like real hard numbers where you track, riders getting on and off each of these bus stops when you're considering consolidation? Or I'm just trying to figure out how you're going to get there.
Sure. I was less involved with this, so I will speak to it from what I know, and I can follow up to get more details if helpful. But we used two major data inputs as part of this effort, one of which was, to Cole or someone's point, the distance between stops, because our standard is, I believe, something between 400 and 500 feet. And so we wanted to flag areas where stops are much closer than that standard. There was also ridership data that was an input into this. We have really good on data, and then we have a model that helps us understand or estimate where the offs are happening based on common trips. But because people don't have to tap off the bus, it's a little bit harder to get at that. But then we also, our service designers or our service planners, who are the ones that kind of engage with the communities a lot now and know where their facilities, where they're more likely to be people with mobility issues, are located. They were also a part of this process. And so it was both data on spacing of current stops, data on ridership of all of our stops, but then also a little bit of the knowledge of the service planners that helped make sure that just because a stop is within 200 feet of another on both ends, there may be a good reason for that. So that consideration happened as well. But again, I can follow up with you to get kind of more details than that, but that's the high level process that was used.
Okay, great. And there's a message from Cole in the chat. Does WMATA have an onboard sensors over the doors that detect passenger counts getting on off?
This is also slightly outside of my area of expertise. We certainly we use that for counting ons, and we may also use it for counting offs. I think we more often rely on this model that we have that comes out of MIT that helps us understand kind of on-off pairs. And that's the data that we often use. I can follow back up though if people are interested in understanding a little bit more about kind of the on-off data that we use as part of this process. I'm not in as much of the technical side. I'm more on the engagement side, so I'm slightly less familiar with this.
Okay, yeah, I think the main thing for that is just we want to make sure that, it's tracked appropriately and, taking equity and, disabilities, things like that into concern. So maybe there are instances where the 200 feet might make more sense than kind of broad brush type thing. That's kind of, I think, what we're getting at. So I think in the interest of time, what I suggest is, I know, again, we have some questions from members of the public, like Bob. And if you're amenable to this, if we can, if member of the public would, or as well as members of the RAC would like to kind of send questions or recommendations to you, we can send it through John, and he can send it to you. If that works for you, we would love to continue the conversation, as obviously you're coming back in a few months, but so we can kind of remain in the conversation.
That sounds great. Yeah, any questions, and then I ideas that you have for extending our outreach, that type of thing, we're also happy to take in. Thank you so much for having us again and for staying so engaged and being a big part of this project. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa. I really appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to move on. Again, Bob, thank you for your questions. I want to make sure that send them to John. And the reason why I kind of wanted to move it along, it's beyond the RAC members, just because we have a lot to get to. The next thing on our agenda is something that we've worked really hard on recently. This is the FY 2025 budget and recommendations. So the RAC, as we all know, has worked very hard to impress upon elected officials in the region the rider perspective in order to stave off these proposed drastic service cuts. We sent numerous letters and stated our case on behalf of riders, which I think we did that very well. Virginia appeared to have some rancor, probably saw this in the news, over various issues like the arena that touched on Metro funding. So after the General Assembly session ended, it appeared to get harder for us regular people to keep track of the Virginia funding contributions, particularly the amounts that Virginia was actually going to contribute. I know I tried to find it, I couldn't find it. So it would be really helpful, I think, if WMATA can put something out, obviously taking things into account, like, being pragmatic and not, kind of a more neutral way. But if WMATA can put something out telling riders where things stand in terms of the overall funding and where we're at on the service cut front, because, like for Virginia, for example, if they're not contributing as much as we expected, then obviously there's gonna be some more service cuts. So I think that's kind of the thing that riders are really, I think that's where riders are at now. So because it's all just kind of dropped off the face of the earth in some ways. So I don't know if we have any guests, or John, if we're gonna throw this to you, or.
So what I can say is that the budget is on the governor's desk. It includes, I believe, $65 million this year, and I can follow up to make sure I have the numbers correct. It includes $65 million this year from the state, which would be matched by $65 million in contributions from the individual jurisdictions in Northern Virginia that are part of the WMATA Compact Service Area. That contribution, taken together with the $200 million in additional funding pledged by Mayor Bowser, and I believe that has been incorporated in her budget that just dropped this morning. And I want to say 140 million, but that may not be exactly right. Again, I can find this from the state of Maryland, would allow the FY25 budget to be implemented with not zero cutbacks and not zero fare increases, but much diminished reductions in service as opposed, compared to what was put out in December. So the Virginia General Assembly met and then finished up its work within the last few weeks and delivered a budget to the governor. The governor has until Monday to sign that budget or veto aspects of that budget. In Virginia, the governor has line item veto power. Today is Wednesday. He hasn't done either of those things yet. He has not indicated, as from what I have seen, publicly, or not seen, I guess publicly is a better way to put it. There have been no public pronouncements about which way he's going to go on either the budget or Metro. At least nothing I've been able to find in the news. So, I think the answer is this is something that's going to have to, it has to, under the General Assembly, under the sort of rules of engagement for adoption of the Commonwealth budget, he needs to do that by Monday. So it's basically, we'll find out within the next couple of days. But you know, speculation would be just that, right? It would be it would be what we technically call a, you know, wild guess. So that's kind of where things stand. If, of course, Virginia doesn't put forward its funding, right? And I'd have to confirm with our I'd have to confirm with our government relations folks, right? If the governor says nope, taking metro funding out of the budget, that is because he can do that as a line item veto. You know, what process is there, if any, for the General Assembly to override that veto? But then if that money is not included in Virginia's budget, based on our funding formula, right, the whole pile of dominoes kind of collapses. Because if Virginia doesn't contribute its share, then Maryland won't contribute its share, and DC won't contribute its share, and then we're back in the dark place. But right now, I think we're kind of locked in what's going to happen. I think we're just locked in a waiting game that has to end within 5 days.
Okay, thank you, John. I just think that this might be helpful to put out there for the writers, not even like getting into any like opinions, things or guessing, just even explaining to writers the process and kind of letting them know when milestones. So like, okay, so writers, Monday we'll know, you know, what Virginia is going to do. And then WMATA can say, depending on what Virginia does and kind of all these budgets shake out, we can tell you more about, you know, where we're going, you know, where everything stands like with our future, right? With our rides and the funding and what cuts, if any, will be made, and whether there be any effects to kind of capital improvements or, you know, kind of these other, you know, kind of these other like things like, you know, the maintenance things or stuff like that that they kind of were talking about secondary. So just wanted to make sure like that we express that at least keeping writers educated and in the loop of even just process so we can kind of gauge that. But does any, before we move on, and thank you, John, for kind of giving us that kind of rundown. That's helpful for us, but thinking writers writ large, I think it would also be helpful for the writers because does anybody else have anything they want to add on this topic?
And is everybody sort of up to speed on what the, you know, the general manager back in, I guess, January put out a revised proposed budget, and is everybody clear on what that contains or does not contain? Because I have a quick one pager I can pop up on the screen if that would be helpful.
I think it's fine. I think the bigger issue is just keeping writers informed of the process. And I remember that, but it's one of those things where it's not tip of my tongue. And I think most writers won't have that. But I think it's more just kind of being like, hey, this is kind of the lay of the land depending on things. Next stop is Monday. You know, just more of like kind of like keeping writers like so people aren't, you know, either just like head in the sand, like we kind of been some people, or what's going on. It's just kind of more, I guess, I don't say openness or transparency because I think the general manager's done a really good job of it. But I feel like we're kind of in this limbo status and nobody's talking about it. And I think that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I've seen a couple people nodding, but I think that's the bigger part, more than the numbers, because you can talk about millions of dollars and stuff like that, but at this point, it doesn't really mean anything. It's more of the drastic cuts and things like that.
So, Mike, actually, there's some people here that weren't in, I don't think we're in budget briefings. So can I just ask John to spend 3 minutes putting that one pager up so everyone's, especially since Melissa noted an earlier budget, I just think it's good for everyone to understand what's on the table now. And I appreciate your comments. You know, I think we're all waiting, you know, patiently and cautiously optimistically about where the budget will land. And so appreciate all that the RAC, you know, has done to help lift rider voice, and we'll see where it all lands shortly. So, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of news once all the legislative process is through. and you know, there's a lot of good work that's going into it, but nothing is final until the legislatures, and we have 3 of them, make their decisions. So appreciate everyone's patience with that. But just John, just really quickly, so everyone's on the same page. Thanks. You're on
John,
mute.
you're muted.
Course, you could see my screen, but there had to be one element. So as Virginia or Maryland, DC, and Virginia indicated willingness to provide additional funding, the general manager put out a revised budget that I think you all, the sort of salient aspects you should be able to see on my screen here, would involve a 12.5% fare increase. So, you know, base fare would go from $2 to $2.25. Rail max fare would go from $6 to $6.75. There was also discussion, and I'm not exactly sure where things have landed, but that the weekend flat fare would become somewhat less flat, i.e. for the longest trips, it would go up to $2.50. And instead of being a flat $2, it would be mileage based, just like our weekday fares or weekday before 9:30 p.m. fares, rounded down to the nearest nickel, based on how far you go. There would be here under more targeted rail service, it would involve shortening the periods in the morning and evening rush hours or peak periods to about 2 hours where we operate enhanced frequencies. And then, you know, things would go back to sort of the all-day base service, which is, I think, 12 minutes on most lines and 8 minutes on green and yellow, and maybe 6 on red. Bus service would not change. You know, we would maintain bus service levels now as we prepare for implementation of the Better Bus Network in a year's time. And then again, a 12.5% fare increase and an increased, reductions in fare evasion in order to ensure that more riders are paying their fare. Parking rates would remain unchanged. I believe, if I remember correctly, parking rates were going to remain unchanged even in the doomsday budget, but this would keep parking rates the same. So that's kind of the revised proposal. That's the latest and greatest. I don't
Great.
think there's anything. That's really sort of the public facing part of the revised proposal.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Bryna, for and everything else. Okay, well, I guess we'll hold back on our pitchforks and our, you know, really see what happens. I think that's probably the best thing we can do right now on this one. So
Well,
I say, go ahead.
I mean, is there anything about that last proposal that that you want, understanding obviously that our board of directors, the folks whom you advise, don't hold all the cards, but are there any aspects of that proposal that you feel would be helpful to weigh in with them on?
Well, we've
right?
already done a formal proposal or recommendation regarding fare increases and things like that.
Okay.
So I think we've kind of done that piecemeal over the last few months. So unless anybody else has anything to add, I think, you know, I think that I appreciate, John, everything you just read to us. And the pitchfork comment was more meant for the doomsday budget more than anything else. This one, I think we've weighed in a few times at least. I know we have some newer members, but we did make a recommendation regarding fare increases and things like that. I think we actually disagreed a bit with the finance committee on that one. Bryna.
Well, John, maybe just outline when the board will take up the budget, final budget review and adoption, if we know yet.
So our current timeline is that the board will take up the budget a week from tomorrow, or I'm sorry, the finance committee will take up the budget a week from tomorrow on April 11th. And then the full board will adopt on April 25th in 2 weeks' time. Of course, depending on what happens Monday, that may need to change. If we have to, rework our entire budget to find $450 million, then it will be later. And I honestly, I don't know what that later timeline would be. So I think some of that is dependent on what the governor does. Actually, a lot of it is dependent on what the governor does. I don't want to soft pedal it.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Bryna. Let's move on to the annual report committee update. Just want to say that Lucas is killing it with the annual report. And on that note, I'm going to turn things over to him. Go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, just first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for comments, revisions, edits that you provided. Big shout out to Cole and Brandon, provide me a lot of good edits, revisions. So thank you. I think the main thing is I've worked through almost all of those. I think just the big thing maybe to talk about tonight is I know Cole raised a good question on a few of the rider proposals that we had listed in there, and basically to what extent do we want to include some of the more far off ones or more of the things that might be over focusing or over strategizing. Basically just to what extent do we want to endorse them as the RAC, and also what if we want to take any out. So I don't know if anybody wants to maybe go over some of the things that they thought that might be a little too much of a reach to keep in the report, but I think that's probably just the main thing is to what extent do we want to endorse them as the RAC, basically, because I think one thing that might be worth changing in the report right now is last year I know that there was a caveat on each of the proposals that was basically endorsed by the RAC or just a general rider proposal. So I think that could be something that we might want to change, but obviously it's not too big of an ask. So.
All right. Does anybody want to go through each one, or is there? I put it this way because I think most of the recommendations were pretty good. Are there any recommendations from the draft annual report that members of the RAC thought were out there? And then maybe we go the opposite way. If there's only one or two, maybe we just do a asterisk to say not recommended by the RAC or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But Cole, go ahead.
Thanks, Michael. Oh, thank you, Lucas, for all your work. Before we get to specific recs, do we think, kind of to what you just said, Michael, do we want to have this one is endorsed by the RAC or this one is not, or do we want to be not endorsed by the RAC? I think we should. I almost feel that I think last year what you did was really good. I think we kind of what Lucas did and highlighted was he's just summarizing what we heard from riders. I do think we should go through perhaps and look at some of these proposed solutions and say, yes, we as the RAC think this is good, and endorse certain ones. I would hate to be I think we shouldn't say not endorsed by the RAC. I think we should pick the ones we endorse, and then folks can infer on the ones that are not endorsed by the RAC what they will. I don't know if that's something we want to do or how you feel like we should structure it. I also don't want this to have to. I don't think we need to get into the weeds on every solution proposed as well.
No, that's fair. I think yeah. If you guys want to just all go through them real quick right now, I don't think to that extent it'll be too much. I know a lot of them are stuff that, we would probably, could put year after year, like basic stuff like that, or stuff that obviously is, good for most people, where you're at. So no one's opposed. We can just kind of go through them real quickly. Let's see here. Okay. So we got first one. I'm starting, if anybody's in the sheet, in the document. Cleanliness and littering. We have, investment in coordination in trash collection and cleaning.
Yep. I think we can endorse that one.
Yep, I agree. Next one, enforcement of littering and eating and drinking and smoking, but mostly enforcement of littering.
So actually, this is one where I did, when we talk about competing priorities and perceptions, I don't think this is one that we should necessarily endorse. I understand the sentiment and it's against the law, it's posted everywhere, but in terms of what we want our, and Metro Police to be enforcing, I don't really think they should be going through and enforcing this. You can't drink on here. Just imagine how many people we see with cups of coffee or drinks with straws or just our stuff. I think it just opens a can of worms that we don't want to go down or have the Metro Police doing. I think there's a lot more things that they should be focusing on, and the security walking through should be focused on other than that. I think it just opens up the situation to become more volatile if you're telling someone you can't have this drink and you're on the train between stations. I don't think it's a recipe for success.
No, yeah, I think that's fair. If anybody,
I don't think we should necessarily get rid of it. I just don't think it's necessarily one we should say is RAC endorsed.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Moving on. More announcements and signage about cleaning, trash collection, and littering. Okay. Then we have Metrobus reliability.
Can I just make I'm sorry, Lucas, to interrupt. Can I just make a process request?
Yeah,
Some
go
of
ahead.
you are putting thumbs up, but you're not really voting. So if this is really a RAC vote, I think you kind of have to get everyone mic for each one.
Okay, yeah, what I was thinking was, let's do this, Brian, if this solves that, because at the end of this, I was gonna move that we adopt the annual report subject to the edits and changes we discussed tonight. How about this, as we go through this, if anybody objects, like say, Cole had, he thought that one should not be RAC endorsed. Lucas said, okay, Brandon, I see his thumbs up. If anybody disagrees with kind of like, as Lucas is going through, then we can talk about it and then we can hash through, then we can take a vote or something like that. But otherwise, I think we can do it this way if that works for Lucas as the chair of the committee, and Bryna as well as kind of the sage advice.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that, at some point you should make a motion. So I think
We will.
your proposal works. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. So moving on to the next one, greater investment in coordination for bus priority lanes. Okay. We have a more reliable and expanded live tracking application and overall, reliability for bus tracking. Okay. Then we have strategic bus routing and strategic bus deployment. Okay. And then we have continued investment and rollout in the Clear Lanes program. So basically ticketing people that are sitting in bus lanes, sitting at bus stops. Okay. Then we have parking. We have a lower tier of parking prices, specifically for like regular commuters or daily park and ride commuters.
There was one thing on here that I noticed. I think it was in the parking.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get there. Where I think you mentioned weekend commuters on the parking lots. I think most of the parking lots are actually free on the weekend, so I suggest
okay.
we take out weekend.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure I mark that down.
And just while I'm talking, not any solutions things, but I noticed you misspelled Loudoun County somewhere on there.
Oh my gosh.
I think
know.
one of our board members is from Loudoun, so we want to, make sure we get
I
that
know.
right.
I also got married in Loudoun County, so
It's a hard one. It's
nobody
spelled
tell my
weird.
wife.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had on that one.
Okay. Okay, then we have like special parking prices, similar to like, early bird pricing, late night pricing, and then the weekend, like you called out. I'll take that out. And then we had someone propose a dynamic pricing model for parking lots. I think that was one that a few people called out that might be not worth, endorsing just because of the way dynamic pricing works in general is just very.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I don't think we should endorse that. I think it's in conflict with special pricing for early mornings or late nights. I think you want the lot to be full. I mean, that incentive, obviously you don't want it to be full and no one can find a spot, but you don't want to disincentivize as it gets more full. You don't want to disincentivize those riders as it gets more full to be using the parking garage, because we want them to be in the parking garage, because that means they're on Metro.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I hated that one. So does anybody think we should dynamic? Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay, and then a parking loyalty or rewards program. Okay, then we have let's see, around service disruptions, closures, and communications around that. Earlier and more frequent communications around service disruptions. And then we have just expanded information around Metro bus alternatives, shuttle buses, and trip planning when it comes to a station being closed or.
Lucas, can you share your screen? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you share your screen? So
oh yeah, I can share.
I think there's a few people that.
Let me make sure I can.
I didn't. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Okay, let me know if you can see it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so yep, right here, shuttle bus, basically expanded offerings on different ways to get where you're going when your station or your line has some closures. That's good. Then we got safety here. Just continued investment in transit police resourcing and visibility. Okay. Then we have continued investment in non-transit police resources, so like crisis intervention officers, Metro ambassadors. And then we have more education and advertising around how and the best ways to contact Metro Transit Police.
Really quickly on this, did anyone indicate, out of curiosity, let me read this section really quickly. Didn't know how to contact MTPD. I guess because if I remember right, they did post signage that was like the text line is down and they're working on I'm wondering if we could maybe add some kind of wording that's like Metro Amada should communicate the timeline of when that text line will be relaunched, or basically just convey that info as soon as it's made available.
It's back up.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool.
Right. Nice. Yeah, that's a good call out. And then I think this is one that we kind of touched on earlier. more intervention and enforcement of illegal or prohibited actions. So I know that when it came to like the littering and the eating and drinking, we weren't going to endorse that, but I think that kind of falls in line with this recommendation right here. So if anybody is against not endorsing that, feel free to speak up. Okay. And then more lighting, cameras, and that's specifically at like, you know, non-core, non-large transfer stations. Okay. Then let's see here for rider and fare technology, updates to the Smart Trip app to address ETA and live tracking discrepancies. Okay. Continued replacement of Metrobus fare card readers. I know that that's something in the works, but it's probably something that, you know, we all probably want to happen sooner rather than later. And then explore options for a more universal transit payment system. I think this one is one of the more far out ones. So I think maybe I would say probably not endorsing that as a rec.
I agree. I couldn't imagine us trying to upheave the entire Smart Trip system. There's a lot of other things that we should focus on.
Exactly. Okay. And then just fiscal and long-term health of the system. I know this like kind of doesn't fall strictly under the purview, but obviously pursuing options for dedicated funding sources. I know that one's tough because, you know, that comes down to a lot of local jurisdictions and coordination, but I think that obviously a lot of people want Metro to partner with more people and try to get more dedicated funding. So I think that one's fine unless anybody has objections. Then we have explore innovative funding ideas, such as stuff like a congestion pricing model. I know that's been in the news a lot with New York City lately. So anybody think that should be a non-endorsement? I know that's kind of a more of a blue skies kind of idea, but
I don't hate it. I think we should endorse finding innovative funding solutions.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean congestion pricing. I think we just provide some guidance, but I do think Moana probably already is doing that, but it's good just for us to kind of reinforce that.
And then revenue optimization. So, I mean, that falls under a lot of different things, but I know that's another one that we flagged for discussion.
Here, I'm not opposed. The part in that I've highlighted here about buying it in bulk is the only piece that I'm really having an issue with in this recommendation. I mean, WMATA doesn't get the revenue until someone uses their Smart Trip card. And so I think it creates some challenges, and also kind of goes a little bit backwards in terms of generating revenue when we're in a budget situation. I don't know if we should be making that recommendation. I like the rest of it that's not highlighted. So either if there's a way we think about, perhaps my thought would be to remove this highlighted section and then endorse line 3, recommendation 3.
I like that.
I'm also like open to other people's ideas if we want to keep it in and make it its own number or something. That's just my initial thought.
No, I think that's good. I think we'll take that out. And then lastly is resource optimization. So basically, you know, switching to more energy efficient stuff, investing in automatic train operation, stuff like that. Okay, sounds good. And then that should be it for the proposals. So
Lucas, this is Pat Sheehan with AAC. So the piece that was written on AAC recommendations, or at least what we've endorsed going forward. If
Mhm.
the RAC wants to endorse that section, that would be good.
Yeah, I think that would probably go, since that's part of the, it's kind of its own standalone section.
Right.
It's, bigger than kind of each of the proposals itself. I think if we vote to approve the report, I think
Okay,
that would
good.
be
That would be
we could
great.
go right
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
that. So
That'll work. And it was very nicely written. Excellent
thank
job.
you. Okay.
Hey, Lucas, thanks
Yes.
for all this work, and to the whole committee. I wonder, in places where, there's been movement, some of the recommendations,
Mhm.
and I don't think this, and then things that you recommended in the past, for example, fare evasion, and there's been action, maybe in some sort of cover or at the front end, acknowledging some of those past actions that have, where there's been movement, or in some of these things, either where the RAC's been involved or has made past recommendations, that to just acknowledge it, just food for thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call out. I kind of have called that out in a few of the sections. Like if you look, if you're able to see my screen, if you look right here, I kind of tried to call some of those out. Like this one, obviously, I tried to talk about that there has been a significant improvement, like in safety and transit policing. So I did call that out in a few sections, and specifically ones that we talked about in RAC meetings. So.
And
That's great.
Lucas, this
Thank
is
you.
Pat again. Oh, I'm sorry, Brenna. I liked what I was thinking maybe next steps might be for the recommendations that have been endorsed here. Maybe having someone run an impact study. What are some of these things going to cost as far as going forward, and just being able to run the money part of it to check on the recommendations, see how they've affected the budget, see if they would be financially something we want to do going forward. I think that would be maybe next steps.
No, that's I like that idea. Great. So I think that's probably it for the report itself. So I don't know if we want to go ahead and put it up for a vote, but I'm definitely going to get these endorsements marked in there. And then that's probably it for the changes, unless anybody has any things they'd like to see formatting wise. But
Thank you, Lucas. I think everybody did a great job. You as a lead, it's amazing. Also really appreciate it. So let's do this. I'll give 1 minute, or really quickly, anybody have any parting comments before we move for a vote? Seeing no hands up, then I move that we adopt the annual report, subject to the changes, edits, and any formatting edits that we discussed tonight. So do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving this subject to the edits, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Well, congratulations, Riders Advisory Committee. Your second annual report has been approved, and I think this is a good thing. So very cool. So thank you, Lucas, and thank you everybody for that one. And Lucas, and for everybody's edification, I kind of given Lucas a little rundown of how we kind of think about the report will be presented to the board. So definitely coordinate with whoever is elected the chair tonight, and with John. And I kind of gave you a rundown of presenting this, how I envision presenting this at the board meeting on the 25th, and working with John to disseminate the finalized report, to all relevant stakeholders, to staff, to the board, and everything like that. So that's kind of a very quick rundown. And so let's move on. Let's move past the outreach member report out. Interest of time for right now. Let's go to RAC leadership elections. So every April, the RAC holds elections for the chair, and 2 vice chairs. The breakdown is so that each of the 3 officers come from one of Virginia, one from Maryland, and one from DC. Typically, candidates for chair come from nominations among the RAC and RAC members, and certainly RAC members are certainly welcome and encouraged to express their desire to serve as chair or vice chair. You can nominate yourself, no issues there. I'll kick things off by noting that I honestly think that every member of the RAC, including the people that aren't here tonight, and our newest members, any one of you have shown impeccable leadership skills with your questions and all your work and everything like that, and would do a great job as a RAC officer. Saying that, I would like to nominate Cole for chair if he's willing to take this on. I think Cole has a wealth of experience. He's pragmatic. He has a great demeanor. I respect him very highly. I think that he will move the RAC forward. But before we hear from Cole, are there any other nominations, or does anyone want to nominate themselves for chair? Let's do chair first. Seeing nothing in there, I will ask Cole, are you willing to take this position on? I'm sure Brian might have thoughts, but
Yeah, I will be. I appreciate those kind words. I'm a transit nerd, so sign me up.
All right, so thank you, Cole. So I've said my piece. I move that.
You need a, oh yeah, go ahead. You need a second, I think.
I was just about to do. I move that we elect Cole as the chair of the RAC. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Second.
Okay, I was waiting for a second.
Yep, there you
All,
go.
okay, let's do this. All in favor of Cole being the chair, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, Cole, you good luck. No, thank you very much.
I'm going after 2 wonderful chairs, so I promise not to mess it up.
I think you will be just fine, and we're going to be better off for it. So thank you. Brian, your hand is up.
Yeah, before we move off the chair thing, first of all, thank you, Cole, for stepping into this leadership role. But I just want to say thanks, Mike. What an awesome year it's been. In a really tough year, you have raised riders' voices in a way that, you know, this RAC is just growing into. And I just can't appreciate your leadership enough. And you know, you filled big shoes after Brian. He did a great job. But each year, you guys are just getting tighter and tighter. And Mike, your leadership has just been amazing. So I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for those kind words. It's much appreciated. It's been an honor to be the chair for this last year, and I look forward to staying on as, you know, in the Brian Meyer regular RAC member role. But let's move on, because I've always had this. I waited to my last chair meeting to run past my self-imposed 8 o'clock time limit. So sorry. But we do need vice chairs. And I think, Cole, you're from DC, right?
Correct.
So we need 1 vice chair from Maryland and 1 from Virginia. So who wants to, we'll do this a little differently. Who wants to be a vice chair who lives in Virginia or Maryland?
John, did
John,
anyone
can you
make
remind
that
us?
thing they wanted to, they were interested?
I didn't get any correspondence from that. I know, I think there's some people I think would be great vice chairs. And for anybody that wants to know, there's the only responsibility is, you know, kind of fill in if Cole isn't around, you know, and just basically you can be involved in the planning of the agendas, and you can kind of have a look at the monthly reports that we send out, or that Cole would send out to the board members. So it's very, and Cole can probably attest to this, it's very low commitment. You're more just kind of, so I'm starting to stare at people, and don't make me call you out. Does anybody want to be a vice chair?
I'll do it if no one wants to do it.
Yeah,
I live in Maryland, so.
Perfect. Okay, let's anybody else from Maryland want to be a vice chair? I move that Ali be the vice chair of the RAC. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Ali, thank you so much. You must have, I was staring right at your box on my screen, so I must have done something mental powers on that one. I think our rest of our Virginia people, is it mostly me and Brian, right? Is there anybody else
And
from Virginia?
Solomon, who is not here.
Okay. Are we allowed to vote for the next vice chair at the next meeting when more people might be here?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay, now that we have a vice chair, I think that saves Cole a little bit. So thank you, Cole. Thank you, Ali. I recommend we just we work on the Virginia one at the next meeting. So if moving really quickly here, back to outreach, member report out. If anybody has anything they want to, like basically this is the RAC members' opportunity to let us know what riders in your networks or you personally observe, whether it's positive, negative, or concerning, so we can potentially work through those issues and craft a recommendation. Does anyone have, does anyone have anything to share, or if you don't want to share it now because of the time, send an email to the group and we can kind of consolidate. But Ali, your hand is up, so.
Yeah, it's very brief. Don't worry. Basically, just positive feedback on the new saloon doors for the fair gates. One thing I noticed that was kind of like positive, which I mean, I guess it's like a bad story turned good. But I guess like I live in Silver Spring and they installed the saloon doors, and I saw this girl. She's trying to basically jump over them, like how they used to do with the older fair gates, and she couldn't go through those narrow edgeways. So she got after multiple tries, she went and got a WMATA Smart Trip card and paid the $2-3 and got over. So they're working. I mean, they're disincentivizing. I still see some people like go extra, but I guess it's the more inconvenient you make them, the more likely they're willing to pay at least $2 or $3 to not fair evade.
Great. Thank you for that. It's good to hear. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, so announcements, new business. I obviously will defer to Cole on future planning, but I do want to note that I had a really good conversation recently with RAC member Kiana Cleveland. We discussed the idea of creating two committees, one being the social media and content governance committee, and another committee focusing on the goals of the RAC. I think Kiana should be the one to really articulate the need for these committees. So I'm just asking that this be added to the next month's agenda for discussion with caveat that let Kiana kind of run that discussion if she still wants to do so. And anything else anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn? All right, seeing none, I want to congratulate Cole and our new RAC officer, Ali, the vice chair. And also to thank Lucas again for your excellent work on the annual report. I definitely look forward to seeing you present that to the board and letting people see that. It's kind of our capstone work product for the year. So great work for everybody. And Lucas, super shout out to you. On that note, I move that we adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed to adjourning? All right, we have it. I hereby say this meeting is adjourned. Thank you to our guests that were online with us, and thank you to all the RAC members and Bryna and John. Thank you so much.
Thanks all. I promise I'll get a new camera by the next meeting. It's not working for me.
No
I
problem.
just feel like I can't be seen.
I did not break the camera in a whole year. I thought I would with my mug. So, and Cole and Ali as well. If you have any questions, moving forward, Cole, I'm happy to kind of walk you through some of the processes. So you're not, so that you're kind of well up to speed.
That would be very nice. Thank
Okay.
you.
We'll get in touch offline, and then we'll set up either a time to talk or just an email, whatever works best for everybody.
Yeah. That
Okay.
sounds good to me.
Perfect. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you guys for having me.